Welcome back, everyone. And today we're doing our first true crime podcast, and we're going to finally figure out what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps, but also what happens when a mother lover tries to ice skate uphill.
Wow, I'm excited.
Yeah, I have no idea what any of those mean. Let's find out.
Welcome for real back, and we're obviously talking about the top 10 movies of 1998.
Obviously.
We're starting off with a tie. I don't want any commentary on either of them because I think it just speaks. They both are the same movie and they speak for themselves. I am, of course, talking about The Thin Red Line and The Wedding Singer. Moving on.
You're right. You know those double DVD sets? They're sold like that.
Just to forewarn people, you're probably going to be upset at this list. This is not what you would think a top 10 of 1998 list is. So just get ready. And I think this next movie definitely is going to show you where we're going with this list. Number 9 is Rush Hour. Zach, you're the one that spoiled this whole list. So go right ahead.
I did. Personally, this was the first PG-13 movie I've ever seen in my entire life. My dad rented it, and my dad was like, "You're into Taekwondo. Let's watch a martial arts movie." And he picked Rush Hour. This introduced America and myself to Jackie Chan. And from there, I went, "Oh man, like Jackie Chan's already a massive star in China." And so then I watched a bunch of his other movies when I was a kid, loved them. And then I was like, "Wait, there's a guy named John Woo." And so I went from Jackie Chan to John Woo, and it was just it leads to other better things. But Rush Hour, it's a fun movie. It has its issues. Some of it didn't age well. I watched it a couple months ago, but it's a fun movie.
Question though, is Shanghai Noon better than Rush Hour?
No,
not even close.
No.
We're going from one end of the fence to the next. We're talking, of course, about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Just the craziest type of movie, but in the best way. If there was ever any movie to perfectly explain the psychosis of Hunter S. Thompson, it is this movie. Like even more so than his documentaries about him. Like this is the movie where it's like, oh, this dude was nuts, but he was like doing the reporting that needed to be done in such a wild and crazy era.
I read the book and watched the movie, like all for like a project I was doing in college, very college, like media thing to do. And I was like, it's great, but also I never kind of want to go back again. And I think that's why I'm like, I did not put it on my list. It's fantastic. Performances are great. It's a very interesting movie experiment type thing, especially like when you've read the book too, and you're just like, I don't want to go back though. Much like The Thin Red Line, I don't want to go back.
Oh, yeah. No. JD, you said it, where this is a very college movie. You'll see posters of this everywhere in dorms, as well as another movie that is much higher on the list.
Whole movie. Weird. That's it.
Very weird.
That's all you have to say.
All right.
Great, weird.
Great, weird. Speaking of great and weird, we got number 8, number 7. We have another good weird movie, and that's There's Something About Mary.
It made gross out humor mainstream almost. This movie made so much money, and it's kind of crazy to think about that because this movie's filthy.
Yeah, I think this movie, I have not watched it since the 90s, I'm pretty sure. And I don't think this movie probably has aged as well as we think it has.
Like the story did not.
Yeah.
But the jokes within the story are worth it.
To me, I'm just thinking about it now of the scenes in my head.
Yeah.
We have Something Darker, and of course I'm talking about Dark City.
It's a crime that people don't talk about Dark City enough. I would never say that The Matrix copied it. But I mean, it was one of those things. It happens like right before, and it just wasn't popular yet, and people were not ready for it. But this movie, it is so good and weird, and it's dark. It's like harder to digest Matrix a little bit. And you got the weird, it's like Alex Proyas, like before he, lost it. And it's like, it's got Kiefer Sutherland's in this thing. It's so good and weird. And those images stick in your head. I remember as a kid seeing the thing where Rufus Sewell was like, like strapped to the thing, having no idea what it was, just being terrified.
It is Roger Ebert's #1 film of 1998. So,
Yeah.
JD, you have some credibility on your side.
Thank you. Thank you.
People are going to be mad that this one's ranked where it is. But you know what? I think people are going to be, it's in the top 5. I mean, all these movies are good. That's the reason they're in the top 10. Well, I take that back. Not all of them are good. But anyways, top 5 for sure is good. So look, if you get mad at us putting Saving Private Ryan at number 5, then you guys, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's a great movie, but it's one of those movies that suffers from the hype of its own greatness. So if someone is like hyping it up to you and you're like, oh, Saving Private Ryan's the greatest war movie ever made, you're like, okay.
They're talking about the opening 30
Exactly.
minutes.
And I think that's why I didn't put it on my list.
Hour and a half. That's like, it's pretty good. It's not that first 30 though.
But hey, Vin Diesel.
And Vin Diesel.
Number 4, we have Rushmore. Some would say Wes Anderson's best movie. I watched this movie as a kid. I didn't watch it in 98 because where I was living at the time, they only showed 2 movies. They only showed 2 movies at a time. Rushmore definitely wasn't going to make it.
Oh, you telling me that Clinton, Arkansas didn't show Rushmore?
Did not. And I think I rented it about 40 times in 1999. I watched it that much.
Wow.
You know, obviously it makes sense. It's about a teenage kid trying to woo a teacher while also trying to write his own play and everything else. And Bill Murray is just like the greatest. And of course, I'm going to idolize him as a kid.
You have this like up and coming director and this like kind of like revitalized story. It's cool. It's that like indie wave that like you had like Clerks and Tarantino, like early Tarantino, and they kind of launched like that kind of indie thing, and then like Anderson comes and kind of ushers in this like mumblecore, like hipster feel movie that is now like kind of still the indie scene. So
look, I know we were talking about some of the earlier movies that were on this list and we're going to upset people.
Ready for it.
This one is definitely being this high is going to upset people. But you know what? I'm going to look directly into the camera and tell you, if you do not have fun watching Blade, what is wrong with you? Because it is, not only is it the best vampire movie I've ever seen, but it's the best comic book movie I've ever seen. Saying it, going out, it burst the superhero movement.
For me, Blade was a movie that your dad showed you. You know, and I believe that's your story, Michael. Like your dad's like, hey, you want to watch some vampires? But and you're like, should definitely not be watching this young, but I love it. And it was like kind of scary, but also kind of cool, or very cool, actually. Sorry.
I grew up reading Spider-Man comic books and watching the cartoon, so I was very well aware of who Blade was. And so my dad was like, hey, you want to go watch the new Wesley Snipes vampire movie? And I was like, well, hell yeah, I want to watch that movie. And the fighting and the music, and it just all fits together so well. It's like the prototype for a superhero movie. And I think to this day, superhero movies still follow that prototype. It's like you got the big bad, you got your side characters that are cool and fun, and you got the main character who's just the best. That blood techno dance scene as the open, oh man, stuck in my head forever.
Yeah.
I'll be laying on my deathbed thinking of that scene.
His final words, Blade.
Number 2, we have The Big Lebowski. It's a cult classic that failed at the box office, but is now insanely quotable. Not only the uncensored version, but the censored version as well.
Story is absolutely pointless, and that's the point. It's all about the journey, man.
Man. What it's like, I don't even want to talk about it much because it's like been talked to death. It's fantastic.
John Goodman, Steve Buscemi, Jeff Bridges, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Coen Brothers. It all comes together. It's great. If you watch it too young, as I did the first time I watched it, you're just gonna be like, I don't know what's happening. Julianne Moore's here. There's a bowling dream sequence. What's going on? But I watched it later in life, and I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense now. So there is a time period where you won't understand it, but if you watch it in like your mid to late 20s, for sure, you're just gonna be like, oh, totally get it.
It's not a quote that really just sticks with me. It's a moment that I think about a lot on windy days when I'm with people. It's just when they go to spread Donnie's ashes, and he was it, and it all just comes back on the dude.
He doesn't even blink.
That that legit lives in my head like all that, like a windy day and someone's doing something or trying to like accomplish something, and all I can think about is the dude just getting hit with ashes, just standing there.
Number one is The Truman Show.
He should have won an Oscar. He carries this movie. And he's like whimsical, but at the same time, deeply sad. On top of that, Ed Harris should have won an Oscar for this. He doesn't show up for like 30 minutes into the movie, but man, he dominates the screen when he's on because he's the God character. And on top of that, they somehow like saw that reality TV was going to be ungodly popular, and it still is. You never root for someone so hard than whenever he's on the boat and Ed Harris is just trying to kill him with the weather. He's like, no, survive the weather. And we are the audience of the people and watching the Truman Show, like, come on, you can do it. And it reminds me of Uncut Gems whenever Adam Sandler's watching the basketball game.
To me, it's like when I think about like this year, when I think about these like last few years of the 90s, I think about this like beautiful movie. I think about like how well it's constructed. The writing is strong. The performances are great because they have to ride a line of both serious and funny and charming and sweet and heartfelt. And I know now like it would be looked at like so cheesy and so like, oh, okay, like yeah, real sweet, blah. But like back then, like it just like did something to you. And like the way the music is played, and just to also think about like, is all the music we're hearing, is that from the show, is that supposed to, it's like there's just so many ways to think about this movie, that also from someone who loved movies and loved TV, like it just, there's so much to offer that like even now when I watch it, I still unpack things. I mean, even when I drive in roundabouts, like this is what I think about, like it's just, this movie is so great and heartfelt, and I love it. And I think it really is not just one of the best of like 98. I think it's one of the best of the 90s. So
The Truman Show is highly influential, not only on reality TV, but on filmmaking as well, because we've seen similar ideas come out since. I mean, The Matrix has a big similar plot point as The Truman Show does. And like JD said, is like the late 90s was all about introspection and about thinking about the world we live in. And so, yeah, Jim Carrey, Truman Show deserves its number one.
I thought that this needed to be a list that felt like 1998. A little crazy, actually very crazy, some good stuff in there. And then sometimes you're just like, what am I watching? Why do we have two Meteor movies? I don't know.
There are two movies that I listed that didn't make it, Pie and Happiness, which are very just depressing, sad, insane movies that I'm glad didn't make the top 10 because I don't want to talk about them. But if you've seen Pie, if you've seen Happiness, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, same with Life is Beautiful.
Man.
That's a heart-wrenching
beautiful movie. Gosh, I forgot that I put Life is Beautiful in there. I didn't make it, but that's okay. That's all right. Man, I'm going to start getting teary just thinking about it. I got to go.
Un esercito di